Welcome to the South Australian True Crime Podcast, where we tell the forgotten stories of murder and disappearances that have rocked the state of South Australia. South Australia was once wrongly given the moniker of murder capital of the world by an ill-informed British documentary maker. However, South Australia certainly is home to some of the more bizarre murderers and serial killers. All of the stories in these podcasts have been thoroughly examined and researched. If any of the South Australian true crime stories cause any issues with you, please contact Lifeline on 13 11 14 or Beyond Blue on 1300 22 46 36. All our stories are available on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, YouTube, and on the South Australian True Crime website at southaustraliantruecrime.com.au. Please like, subscribe, leave comments and recommend these podcasts to all your friends and family. Today's podcast is presented by Austees, the Australian t-shirt printer, and Smoky Blues guitars. Links for these businesses can be found in the notes of this show. And now, buckle up and on with the show. To understand this story, you need an introduction to 5 people. Person 1 is Michael Verhoef. Born in China in August of 1968, his family moved to Australia when he was 15. Michael looked Chinese, so you would often see him disguising himself by wearing dark sunglasses. Michael grew up in Australia, but kept some of his childhood contacts back in China. Because of this, Michael was the perfect go-between, especially in the drug scene, and at an early age, Michael set up deals between Chinese triad members and Australian bikie clubs. At the age of 25, the police arrested Michael for selling single deals of heroin to locals in the Elizabeth shopping centre in the northern suburbs of Adelaide. While he was awaiting trial on bail, he was busted once again with heroin. This time, police arrested Michael and another northern suburbs man with 10.9 kilograms of pure Chinese heroin, along with 8 other men Australia-wide, as the drugs were part of a massive 47.7 kilograms importation via Perth and destined for dealers all over Australia. Michael received 6 years imprisonment. 10 years later, in 2004, he was again in trouble for his part of a massive methamphetamine importation group. This time the importation was centred around Dubbo, New South Wales, and was the largest importation of illegal drugs on record at the time. Person 2 is a man named Bradley Eric Fowler. Although public information on Bradley is hard to find, there are sealed court records concerning a rather large case in the mid-80s in a secluded part of South Australia. I am not 100% convinced this is the same person involved in both cases, but the people's ages and a few more details match up. Because of not being 100% guaranteed, this is the same person. I'm only 90% sure, and the fact that if it is the same person, at the time of the offence back in 1984, the person named on court documents would have been a minor, so I will not publish information on the crime from back then. However, as evident later on, I needed to include Bradley in this story. Person 3 is Patrick Francis McCarthy. Born in 1962. At the time of this story, Patrick was a fully patched member of the Finks MC. Previous to today's story, the most significant charge laid against Patrick was in 2009. A woman was travelling down Green Hill Road at Uradla when she stopped to let another car reverse out of a driveway. Patrick was behind the woman and got angry that she had stopped to let the other vehicle out into the traffic. Patrick tailgated her while yelling abuse out the window at her. The woman then did what she claimed was possibly the stupidest thing she had ever done in her life. She gave Patrick the finger, then turned into a doctor's surgery car park. Patrick then blocked the exit to the car park, preventing her from leaving. The woman claimed that when she got out of her car, Patrick slapped her around the back of the head and abused her, including telling her, "I know where you live, and I will come and get you tonight." When the police came to interview Patrick a couple of days later, Patrick refused to answer any questions the police asked. The courts eventually dropped the actual assault charge, but Patrick was fined $400 for refusing to answer questions and had recorded a conviction. Persons 4 and 5 are 2 women. One of the women, a 23-year-old from Victoria, and a 29-year-old from Aldgate, who was the niece of. Further information cannot be legally released about these 2 women due to suppression orders. The story. The 2 women, 23 and 29, were out partying in town when one recognized Michael Verhoef as a friend and associate of the 29-year-old's uncle, fully patched Finks member, Patrick McCarthy. The women asked Michael Verhoef for some drugs, but they did not have any money, so all agreed to go to the 29-year-old's home in McAllen Avenue, Beaumont, at 4 a.m. to get some cash. It just so happened that Patrick was asleep upstairs in the house, so the very drunk girls took Michael into the home's garage. The 29-year-old went into the house to get some money, leaving Michael and the 23-year-old woman alone. When she returned to the garage, Michael was attempting to rape the very drunk woman. The girls either left Michael and Patrick alone in the garage and went into the house and didn't see the bashing of Michael, or the pair were there through the whole ordeal and helped clean up the mess and blood. Patrick, realizing he had a dead body on his hands, called a long-term friend, Bradley Eric Fowler, to help him dispose of the body. The pair put Michael's body in the boot of a grey Peugeot. They then drove the body to Gumview Road, in Kaipo Forest. At just after 5 in the morning, this road was secluded and quiet enough, so the pair walked 10 paces into the scrub and buried Michael's body in a hastily dug shallow grave, then left. Meanwhile, back at the McAllen Avenue house, the police had arrived, called in by a neighbor, who heard what sounded like a beating of a person, glass breaking and other noises in the early hours. By this time, someone had cleaned up 90% of the mess. The police claimed that all through the house there was a strong smell of bleach, but the police did not realize it was coming from the carport, and could not find any reason to search any further. Over the next 4 days, people started reporting Michael missing. Putting 1 and 1 together and coming up with 2, the police went back and tried to question Patrick, as not only had he been an associate of Michael's, but he had a disturbance at his house on the same day that Michael had disappeared. The police also questioned neighbors, and some reported hearing yells, loud voices and cries coming from the place before a grey Peugeot pulled into the garage, but then left 10 minutes later. The Peugeot was seen again, at around 11 a.m., when it dropped Michael off at the house, then drove off. The police also tracked down who else was at the house when Michael disappeared, and one of the women eventually broke and told the police everything she knew. The police soon caught Patrick, Bradley, and the 2 women. The 23-year-old Victorian woman received no charges, and was eventually released. Bradley received charges of being a helpful accessory to murder, but dropped all charges against him. Patrick was kept on remand until his trial came up. At first, the charges against him were for murder. The courts eventually dropped the murder charges, and Patrick had manslaughter charges laid against him. Patrick kept up the "I was protecting the 2 girls" plea throughout the trial. Finally, the judge ruled that the bashing was way over the top severe as a defensive attack. Patrick ended up some 4 years after his arrest, sentenced to 12 years of incarceration, with a 9 years and 7 months a non-parole period backdated to when the police first took Patrick into custody, in June 2012. Michael is buried in the Enfield Memorial Park. Thank you for listening to another South Australian true crime podcast. I hope you have subscribed, hit the like bell, commented or left a rating. We will be back with another true crime story from South Australia real soon. And don't forget to visit our sponsors, Austees and Smoky Blues Guitars. Links are in the notes below. Until we meet again, don't forget. Don't get murdered.